Antonio Macrì was the boss of the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria, Italy. Together with Domenico Tripoddo and Girolamo Piromali, he formed a powerful triumvirate, whose authority was respected by other mafia bosses. He maintained close ties to the Sicilian mafia and helped expand the 'Ndrangheta internationally to Canada, Australia and South America, earning the nickname the Boss of Two Worlds. Macrì was linked to the 1967 Locri massacre, a mafia hit targeting boss Domenico Cordi during a feud over cigarettes. His masked men fired machine guns in a crowded fruit market, killing Cordi and two innocent bystanders. But tensions grew as other bosses wanted to expand business into kidnappings and drug trafficking. Macrì opposed these changes and also resisted the creation of the Santa, a secret inner society meant to increase the power and secrecy of top bosses. His attempts to block the rise of newer leaders deepened divisions. Macrì prevented a violent confrontation between Tripoddo and his former underling, Giorgio De Stefano, at a meeting, but it was already too late. Tripoddo wanted to strike first. He killed Giovanni De Stefano and wounded his brother Giorgio in November 74. Retaliation followed in January 1975 when Macrì was shot in his hometown of Siderno in broad daylight. Macri's murder triggered a 4-year war that left over 200 people dead, with some victims fed to pigs to hide the bodies. Tripoddo was later arrested and in August 1976 stabbed to death in prison on orders from De Stefano. Li Tailong was a senior boss in the San Yeon Triad, one of the largest triad organizations in Hong Kong and China. Known for his ferocity, he was a constant problem for Hong Kong police. In 2002, he led his followers in a clash against the rival Wo Shing Wo Triad, badly injuring their leader. In 2006, Li had a pub brawl, where he smashed a whiskey bottle into the face of a Wo Shing Wo leader, causing a lasting grudge. On the morning of August 4th, 2009, Li had just finished celebrating a subordinate's birthday and was walking to the entrance of the Shangri-La Hotel to leave. Suddenly, several cars arrived and blocked the roads. One vehicle sped forward and rammed Li, who was smoking a cigar beside his car, throwing him several meters. 3 men jumped out with cleavers and repeatedly hacked him before fleeing. He was rushed to the hospital but died around 6 a.m. from severe blood loss. Salvatore Riina, known as Totò or the Beast, was a boss of the Sicilian Mafia. He's known for his violent campaign across Italy. A fugitive since the late 1960s, after being indicted for murder, he ordered the killings of judges, police officers and prosecutors to intimidate the state. But he went one step further, targeting women, children and random civilians, like in a December 1984 train bombing which killed 17 innocent people. Hitman Giovanni Brusca estimated he personally murdered between 100 and 200 people on Riina's orders. The violence peaked in the 1992 Capaci highway bombing that killed anti-mafia prosecutor Falcone, his wife and 3 policemen. After 23 years on the run, Riina was captured in 1993. His arrest was followed by a wave of bombings of art galleries and churches. He was imprisoned under strict isolation with 26 life sentences, unable to use phones or communicate with anyone, but he still ordered more murders from jail. However, his health soon worsened as he suffered from kidney cancer, heart problems and Parkinson's. In his final days, he was recorded saying he regrets nothing. Riina died from sepsis on November 17, 2017, aged 87, while in a coma after 2 surgeries at the Parma Prison Hospital. Antonio Bardellino was the founder of the Casalesi clan in the 1980s, one of the most powerful and wealthy groups within the Camorra Mafia in the Naples region. He was one of the last old-style godfathers, a reference point for all Camorra clans, even those that opposed him. Bardellino also had strong connections with the Sicilian Mafia and was involved in their drug trade. He ran a fish flour import-export company, which served as a cover for a drug smuggling operation from Brazil. According to the official account, Bardellino was murdered on May 26, 1988 in his home in Búzios, Brazil, a seaside resort in Rio de Janeiro. Nero. He was allegedly killed by his right-hand man, Mario Jovine, during an internal Casalesi clan feud. How is unclear. However, the story was never confirmed because Bardellino's body was never found. Jovine himself was later murdered in Portugal in 1991, fueling speculation that Bardellino was alive, staged his death, and secretly handed power to other Casalesi families to protect his own. Al Capone was the boss of the Chicago Mafia. He built his power through racketeering and alcohol smuggling during Prohibition and was later labeled Public Enemy Number 1. He is most known for ordering the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where 7 members of the North Side Gang were gunned down in broad daylight. Authorities couldn't convict him for murder or bootlegging, but they threw him into Alcatraz for tax evasion. In prison, he developed neurosyphilis from an untreated infection he had contracted in his 20s while working as a bouncer in a brothel. The disease started to affect his brain, leaving him confused, disoriented, and with the mental capacity of a child. He was released early in 1939 due to declining health and returned to his Florida mansion, where he spent his final years together with his family. Eventually, he suffered a stroke followed by pneumonia, and his heart failed on January 25th, 1947 at age 48. Giuseppe Masseria was an Italian-American mafia boss in New York City and head of the Morello family. In 1930, he entered a violent conflict with a rival faction led by Salvatore Maranzano and Joseph Bonanno in what became known as the Castellamarese War, a struggle for control in New York. But by early 1931, the war had turned against Masseria. His right-hand man, Charles Lucky Luciano, secretly switched sides and made a deal with Maranzano to arrange Masseria's murder in exchange for control of his rackets and a position as Maranzano's second-in-command. When Masseria learned of Luciano's betrayal, he asked his hitman, Joe Adonis, to help kill Luciano, but Adonis instead warned Luciano. On April 15, 1931, Luciano lured Masseria to a restaurant in Coney Island, Brooklyn. While they were playing cards, Luciano excused himself to the bathroom. Gunmen, reportedly Albert Anastasia, Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis, and Bugsy Siegel, then entered the dining room and shot Masseria. No one was ever indicted. With Mazzarano's approval, Luciano took over Masseria's gang and became his lieutenant. If you are jumping between AI tools, there's a simpler way. ChatLLM by Abacus AI brings everything into one place. ChatGPT 5.4, Gemini 3.1 Pro, Claude Opus 4.6, Grok 4.1, DeepSeek, and more, so you don't have to switch tabs or subscriptions. What makes it seamless is Route LLM, which automatically picks the best model for whatever you're asking. You also get built-in image generation with Nano Banana 2 and Flux, plus video generation using Sora 2 and Kling 3.0. You can also create deeply researched PowerPoint presentations, or use the Abacus AI Deep Agent, which can build full apps, websites, job boards, or even other AI tools in minutes. And the best part, instead of paying for multiple platforms, it's all included for just $10 a month. Check it out at www.abacus.ai or use the link in the description. Salvatore Maranzano. After the murder of Masseria, Maranzano reorganized the Italian-American gangs in New York into the 5 families to prevent future conflicts. He then called a meeting of crime bosses where he declared himself capo di tutti capi. Maranzano also reduced the income of rival families while strengthening his own power. Luciano initially accepted the arrangement, but he and his allies soon grew dissatisfied with Maranzano's control. By December 1931, Maranzano realized Luciano was a threat and secretly hired Irish hitman Vincent Gigante. But Lucky Luciano was warned again, this time by Tommy Lucchese. On September 10th, Maranzano summoned Luciano and bosses Vito Genovese and Frank Costello to his office. Convinced he was about to be killed, Luciano acted first. Helped by Mayor Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, he sent Lucchese and 4 Jewish gangsters whose faces were unknown to Maranzano's men. Disguised as tax agents, 2 of them disarmed Maranzano's bodyguards. Lucchese identified Maranzano, and the attackers stabbed him several times before shooting him. Charles "Lucky" Luciano became the dominant crime boss in the US after Maranzano was gone. He promoted his most trusted associates into leadership positions in what became the Luciano crime family. He could have declared himself boss of all bosses, but he abolished the title, believing it made the holder a target. In 1931, he gathered major bosses in Chicago and proposed the creation of the Commission, a governing body meant to settle disputes and divide territories between families. The bosses approved, and the Commission became one of Luciano's most important feats. In 1936, Luciano was convicted of running a large prostitution racket and was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. During World War II, his friend Meyer Lansky bargained a deal with the US Navy for him to provide naval intelligence. In 1946, his sentence was commuted on the condition that he be deported to Italy. He settled in Naples and briefly tried to move to Cuba before US pressure forced him back to Italy, where he lived like a king. But by 1962, the 64-year-old had heart problems, and on January 26, his luck had run out. He went to the airport to meet a Hollywood producer interested in making a film about his life. While waiting, Luciano suffered a massive heart attack and died before help arrived. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel was a founder and leader of Murder Inc., the enforcement arm of the national crime syndicate tied to the Jewish mob and the Italian-American mafia. A member of Lucky Luciano's New York crew, he helped bring organized crime to Las Vegas and pushed other crime families to invest there, playing a major role in the rise of the Las Vegas Strip. Known for his violence and gun skills, he became one of the first celebrity gangsters. But over time, his mob partners suspected he had become greedy and was skimming money. On June 20th, 1947, Siegel was sitting on his sofa reading the LA Times in his Beverly Hills mansion when an unknown gunman fired a M1 carbine through the window, hitting him in the eye, cheek, and chest. The murder was never officially solved. Umberto Anastasio, better known as Albert Anastasia, was one of the most feared figures in American organized crime, a founder of the modern American Mafia and boss of Murder Inc. He reportedly killed his own boss, Vincent Mangano, to seize control of the Mangano crime family, gaining support from Frank Costello, then the powerful leader of the Luciano family. But by 1957, Vito Genovese wanted to reclaim control of the Luciano family from Costello. To succeed, he also needed to eliminate Costello's close ally Anastasia. So Genovese secretly gained the support of Anastasia's underboss, Carlo Gambino, by promising him leadership of the family. Genovese first moved against Costello. On May 2nd, 1957, gunman Vincent Gigante shot and wounded Costello outside his apartment. The injury convinced Costello to step down. The final step came on October 25th, 1957. That morning, Anastasia entered the barber shop of the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan. While relaxing in the barber chair, without bodyguards but some towels around his neck, two masked men rushed in, pushed the barber aside and opened fire. Anastasia tried to get up but fell into the mirror as the attackers kept shooting until he collapsed dead on the floor. Vito Genovese. With Anastasia gone and Costello forced to step down, Genovese seized control of the Luciano crime family, later known as the Genovese family. He then organized a major mafia summit to consolidate his power and become boss of bosses, but the meeting was raided by police. Genovese said he was only attending a barbecue and talking business. Police let him go. But 2 years later, he was convicted on narcotics charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Lucky Luciano, still in exile in Italy and angry that Genovese had tried to kill his friend Costello, allegedly helped pay $100,000 to a Puerto Rican drug dealer to falsely implicate Genovese in a deal. Even in prison, Genovese continued to run his crime family and ordered hits on mobsters he disliked. But on February 14th, 1969, he suffered a heart attack and died at the Springfield Prison Hospital aged 71. Frank Costello was known for his political connections, earning the nickname the Prime Minister. Unlike other bosses, he preferred strategy and influence over violence. After Lucky Luciano was jailed in 36, Luciano tried to run the family from prison with help from Costello and Meyer Lansky, but it was too difficult. Vito Genovese became acting boss, but in 37 he fled to Italy to avoid prosecution, and Luciano appointed Costello as acting boss of the Luciano crime family. When Genovese returned, he tried to convince Luciano to make him the true leader. Luciano refused and kept Costello in charge. Genovese sent a gunman after him, but the bullet only grazed his scalp, and Costello survived. He refused to identify the attacker and chose to step down, allowing Genovese to take over. Costello then retired, dedicating his life to gardening. In early February 1973, he suffered a heart attack at his Manhattan home and died at the hospital on February 18th. Carlo Gambino. After Albert Anastasia was murdered on orders from Vito Genovese, Gambino took control of Anastasia's crime family, which took his name going forward. When Genovese was imprisoned in 59, Gambino took over the Mafia Commission. Under his leadership, the Gambino family grew to 500 soldiers and more than 1,000 associates. He also formed an alliance with Thomas Lucchese, boss of the Lucchese crime family, and together they controlled the airport, the commission, and much of organized crime in New York. Gambino ruled his family for 20 years and became known as one of the most successful mafia bosses, keeping a low profile and avoiding prison. But by 1953, he began suffering from heart problems. He died of natural causes on October 15, 1976, at his home in Massapequa while watching TV, aged 74. He unexpectedly chose Paul Castellano as his successor instead of his underboss Della Croce. When Paul Castellano became boss of the Gambino family, Gambino's former underboss, Della Croce, accepted the decision. But the family split into two factions, Della Croce's group in Manhattan and Castellano's group in Brooklyn. At the height of his power, Castellano built a lavish 17-room mansion designed to resemble the White House. He became increasingly reclusive, rarely leaving the house in his silk robes and requiring capos to visit him for orders. Many members grew dissatisfied with his leadership. John Gotti, a protege of Della Croce, saw him as greedy and lacking street cred. Castellano also banned drug dealing under threat of death, while Gotti wanted to expand into it. Later, Castellano allegedly ordered the murder of Gambino associate Nicolas Schibetta, the brother-in-law of Sammy the Bull Gravano, which created further resentment. After Della Croce died of cancer, Castellano's failure to attend his wake angered the Manhattan faction. He also suggested breaking up Gotti's crew. On December 16, 1985, Castellano arrived for a mobster meeting at Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. As he stepped out of the car, a three-man hit team rushed in and shot him multiple times. His underboss and driver, Thomas Bilotti, was also offed. Gotti and Gravano watched from a nearby car. 2 weeks later, Gotti became the new boss of the Gambino family. Vincent Gigante was a boss of the Genovese family in New York City with big influence over the five families and the wider Cosa Nostra. In 1986, he ordered a failed car bomb attempt on Gambino boss John Gotti. After Gotti and several Gambino members were convicted, Gigante was seen as the most powerful crime boss in the US. For nearly 30 years, he pretended to be mentally ill to avoid jail, earning the nickname The Oddfather by wandering Greenwich Village in a bathrobe and slippers, while peeing in the street and mumbling to himself or parking meters. Still, in 1997, he was convicted of racketeering and conspiracy. Gigante died from heart disease on December 19, 2005 at the prison hospital in Springfield, Missouri. Joseph Colombo. In 1963, boss Joseph Magliocco joined Joseph Bonanno in a plan to assassinate several members of the Mafia Commission and seize control of New York's underworld. Colombo, who had been assigned by Magliocco to carry out the hits, instead reported the plot. The plan collapsed, Magliocco was forced into exile, and Colombo was rewarded with leadership of the crime family. Colombo then founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League, claiming federal investigations into the Mafia were anti-Italianism. His leadership and charisma quickly grew the organization and brought public attention. On June 28, 1971, during the second Italian Unity Day rally in New York, Colombo was shot 3 times in the head and neck by lone gunman Jerome Johnson. Johnson was immediately shot by Colombo's bodyguards. Colombo survived but was left paralyzed. He died on May 22, 1978 from cardiac arrest caused by the injuries. The motive for the shooting remains disputed. Theories suggest involvement of the FBI, Carlo Gambino, or Joe Gallo after conflicts within the family. Aslan Usoyan was a Georgian-born crime boss widely regarded as one of the most powerful figures in the Russian mafia. During the Abkhazia conflict, he financially supported the Abkhaz side and was suspected of involvement in the disappearance of the mafia boss Givi Beradze, who had supported Georgian troops. Usoyan was linked to numerous gang wars with rival groups, assassinations, kidnappings, and extortion across the North Caucasus and Georgia. He was also involved in a long conflict with Georgian mobster Tariel Onyani and the Oganov brothers, who tried to kill him on several occasions but ultimately were killed themselves in 1999. On September 16, 2010, Usoyan survived an assassination attempt when an unknown attacker shot him with a 9mm in central Moscow. But on January 16, 2013, he was shot again in Moscow by a sniper positioned on the 6th floor of a nearby apartment as he left a restaurant. He died on the way to the hospital. Mafia boss Tariel Onyani is considered the main suspect. Tadamasa Goto was a powerful Japanese Yakuza boss, considered one of the most ruthless. He built a fortune through prostitution, protection rackets, and white-collar crime, while gaining a reputation for extreme violence. His men were known for bulldozing businesses that refused to pay protection money and beating victims in front of their families. But Goto developed severe liver disease. In 2001, he donated $100,000 to the University of California and received a liver transplant there, allowing him to jump the queue. That same year, 186 people in the Los Angeles area died waiting for a liver transplant. Goto reportedly provided information to the FBI about Yakuza front companies, senior crime figures, and links to North Korea in exchange for permission to enter the US for surgery. He largely disappeared from the Yakuza world in 2008 after being forced into retirement by other bosses. He became a Buddhist priest and died of unknown causes on February 8, 2026, aged 83. Rocco Zito was an Italian-Canadian 'ndrangheta boss operating in Canada. He got rich via illegal gambling, loan sharking, fraud, counterfeiting, and alcohol smuggling. Zito also had connections with major Canadian mafia families and the Gambino crime family, helping establish a drug pipeline to Toronto. In 1986, he was jailed for murdering a photo studio owner after he failed to repay a loan. The body was found frozen in the trunk of his car, wrapped in garbage bags, with gunshot wounds and facial fractures caused by an ashtray. After his release, Zito lived quietly with his son-in-law and family. But on January 29, 2016, during a family argument inside the house, his son-in-law shot and killed him at age 87. Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo was boss of the Philadelphia Mafia from 1981 and became known for extreme violence. His aggression showed early. In 1963, while still a low-level mob member, he was jailed for stabbing a dock worker he disliked. Scarfo later worked with Nicholas Nick the Blade Virgilio in the murder of Judge Edwin Helfand after the judge refused a bribe. He also ordered his nephew to shoot associate Vincent Falcone for making negative comments about him and his company. In 1981, Philadelphia boss Phil Testa fell over when a nail bomb under his porch exploded, triggering a war within the family. Scarfo took over and led the family for a decade through intimidation and constant hits driven by paranoia. In 1984, he ordered the murder of his own capo and top hitman Salvatore Testa, fearing his growing popularity and ambition. In '85, Scarfo tried to extort $1 million from developer Willard Rouse by sending his hitman Nicholas Caramandi. But Rouse contacted the FBI. When Scarfo later ordered a hit on Caramandi, his own hitman turned informant and testified against him. Scarfo was eventually convicted and received consecutive sentences of 14 years, 55 years, and life. He died alone of natural causes on January 13th, 2017 at a medical center in Butner, North Carolina. Matteo Messina Denaro was a powerful boss of the Sicilian Mafia. He was responsible for dozens of murders, including the killing of 11-year-old Giuseppe Di Matteo, as well as bombings, extortion, and the assassinations of 2 anti-mafia prosecutors. He became a fugitive in 1993 and remained on the run for 30 years, becoming Italy's most wanted criminal and one of Europe's top targets. In 2010, he was listed among the world's 10 most wanted and powerful criminals. In January 2023, he was arrested at a private cancer clinic in Palermo while receiving treatment under a false name. He died from colon cancer in a prison hospital on September 25, 2023. Benedetto Santapaola was an Italian mafia boss who led the Catania branch of the Sicilian Mafia and was considered one of the most powerful and bloodthirsty ones. In 1978, he took control of the Catania family after killing his former friend and boss Giuseppe Calderone. His rule was challenged by the rival Cursotti gang and Alfio Ferlito's faction, a former ally of Calderone. The conflict led to street gun battles and dozens of murders. Santapaola himself was seriously wounded in ambushes by Ferlito's men twice. After Ferlito was arrested, Santapaola wanted revenge. In 1982, during a prison transfer, gunmen from the allied Corleonesi faction ambushed the convoy, killing Ferlito and 4 policemen. To pay back the favor, Santapaola sent his hit team to Palermo, where they murdered Police General Dalla Chiesa, his wife, and Officer Russo. He later ordered the murder of journalist Giuseppe Fava after he exposed links between the Catania Mafia, businesses, and politics. In 1994, Maurizio Avola confessed that he had committed about 70 hits for his uncle Santapaola. After 11 years on the run, Santapaola was arrested in 1993 at a farmhouse hideout near Catania. His wife, Carmela Minitti, was later shot in 1995 by a former rival seeking revenge. Santapaola received multiple life sentences and died of natural causes on March 2, 2026 in Milan prison, aged 87.